I was clear on that throughout. I was clear with President Trump throughout, all the way up to the morning of January 6th. But let's be clear on this point. It wasn't just that they asked for a pause. The president specifically asked me, and his gaggle of crackpot lawyers asked me to literally reject votes, which would have resulted in the issue being turned over to the House of Representatives, and literally chaos would have ensued. So, Martha, people can read the indictment, and frankly, I've said before, I had hoped it had not come to this point. I don't know if the government can meet the standard, the burden of proof beyond reasonable doubt for criminal charges. But the American people deserve to know that President Trump and his advisors didn't just ask me to pause. They asked me to reject votes, return votes, essentially to overturn the election and to keep faith with the oath that I made to the American people and to Almighty God. I rejected that out of hand, and I did my duty that day.
This is Mike Pence completely dismantling Trump and his allies by telling the truth about what happened on January 6th. As he notes, Trump did not ask Pence to simply pause the counting of the votes. He asked him to send the results back to the states and reject the will of the people, which would have, in effect, overturned the results of the election. Of course, in typical Mike Pence fashion, he goes on to qualify this damning answer by saying he's not sure if this unprecedented and illegal push by Trump is enough to meet the burden of proof sought by Jack Smith in the grand jury's indictment, but hey, wouldn't be a spineless Mike Pence answer if it didn't manage to both sides a literal coup attempt by a mob that was chanting calls to have him hanged. What's especially important here is that this is direct, first-hand evidence from the then-sitting vice president that's being used by Jack Smith against Trump. The indictment cited contemporaneous notes Mike Pence took during his meetings with Trump as evidence to underpin the case. And this is new information that was not previously included in accounts of what happened on January 6th. Remember, Mike Pence refused to cooperate with the January 6th committee and even fought against cooperating with the special counsel probe until a subpoena was issued forcing him to testify before the D.C. grand jury. The fact that he did provide new evidence for Jack Smith's probe is just further evidence of how this case against Trump is even stronger than the already rock-solid one that we were presented by the House January 6th committee. As legal expert Joyce Vance notes on Twitter, this is important evidence. Pence's contemporaneous notes, which he would have known would someday be very important, even if only as historical records, are something he would have been careful to be accurate with. I'd love to see Trump's lawyers cross-examine and accuse him of lying. Of course, it's certainly not beyond Trump's lawyers to attempt such a thing, but I think you're going to be hard-pressed to find a jury or judge willing to believe that the contemporaneous notes that were taken by the sitting vice president are somehow less believable than the words of a serial liar who, according to Mike Pence's own account, told him that he was too honest for refusing to overturn the results of the election. Quote, on January 1st, Trump called Pence and berated him because he learned that the vice president had opposed a lawsuit seeking a judicial decision that, at the certification, the vice president had the authority to reject or return votes to the states under the Constitution. The vice president responded that he thought there was no constitutional basis for such authority and that it was improper. In response, Trump told Pence, "You're too honest." Within hours of the conversation, the defendant reminded his supporters to meet in Washington before the certification proceeding, tweeting, "The big protest rally in Washington, D.C. will take place at 11 a.m. on January 6th. Location details to follow. Stop the steal." Yeah, somehow I don't think the guy who thinks that honesty is a bad trait is going to fare too well in court. I don't know, just a hunch. And look, sure, it tells us that Trump is a liar. We already knew that. But it also gives the court direct evidence based on testimony from Trump's second in command, someone who, by all accounts, is willing to bend over backwards for him, even despite a mob being sicked on him by that very person, that this is all a matter of free speech, and he was just saying he thought the election was stolen as a matter of opinion. This remark from Trump to Pence is airtight proof that he was acting with malice and intentionally lying to stoke a mob and attack the seat of government. And there's more evidence where that came from. The indictment goes on to detail numerous instances where Trump reportedly pressured Pence to violate the law. On Christmas, when Pence called to wish Trump a Merry Christmas, 4 days later on December 29th, then he berated him on New Year's Day, calling Pence too honest, and then again on January 3rd, he still continued to pressure Pence. Not only was Trump corrupt, he was relentless with that very corruption. And all of this comes as we're seeing Mike Pence start to take a stronger stance toward calling out Trump. Although, to be fair, a stronger stance is relative because we're still talking about Mike Pence here. But here's what he said in reaction to Trump's third criminal indictment.
By God's grace, I believe we did our duty that day. Fulfilled the oath that I'd taken to the Constitution and to the American people. And the Constitution is quite clear about the role of the vice president in the counting of electoral votes. It essentially says the vice president presides over a joint session of Congress where the electoral votes that are certified by the states shall be opened and shall be counted. And irrespective of the indictment, I want the American people to know that I had no right to overturn the election. And then on that day, President Trump asked me to put him over the Constitution. But I chose the Constitution, and I always will. I mean, I really do believe that anyone who puts themselves over the Constitution should never be President of the United States. And anyone who asks someone else to put themselves over the Constitution should never be President of the United States again. I've been very forthright about this issue, and I'll continue to be.
Which probably explains the attack by Trump himself on Truth Social. He wrote, "I feel badly for Mike Pence, who is attracting no crowds, enthusiasm, or loyalty from people who, as a member of the Trump administration, should be loving him. He didn't fight against election fraud, which we will now be able to easily prove based on the most recent fake indictment and information which will have to be made available to us finally. A really big deal. The VP had power that Mike didn't understand, but after the election, the rhinos and Dems changed the law, taking that power away." And obviously this is all the usual rambling nonsense, but the notion that Trump believes Mike Pence had the power to unilaterally declare himself and his own running mate the winner of the election really does put his delusion on full display. Someone should have let Al Gore know that elections are a mere formality and the real power lies with the vice president during certification. And by the way, a post like that is the perfect reminder that those so-called traditional Republicans who claim to be the most pro-Constitution, pro-law and order, pro-America are actually the ones most willing to sell this country out. And they're doing it in deference to a thrice indicted, twice impeached criminal defendant who tramples on the Constitution every chance he gets. These people were willing to give away their entire party to a cult leader, and now they're delusional enough to run against him in a primary while polling in the single digits and still bending over backwards to defend him wherever they see the opportunity. And actually, it is the Democrats, the ones who they spent years slandering as anti-Constitution, anti-America, and immoral, who are doing the actual necessary work to protect this country from the anti-democracy threat that is Donald Trump. So while it's great that Mike Pence has finally decided to do the absolute bare minimum by cooperating with Jack Smith, just remember, these Republicans are only willing to do the right thing when they are literally legally required to do so. I guess I was expecting more from the guy who was almost hanged by his own party, but then again, if you needed proof that it's a cult, that is exactly what this is. Before you go, I need some help. Please subscribe to the channel and do your part to help grow the progressive media ecosystem. I don't do sponsorships or paid ads, I won't ask for money, but just subscribing to this channel goes a really long way, and it helps get the message out to more people. The subscribe button is right here on this screen. You can also subscribe to my Spanish language channel, which I made to reach those crucial Spanish-speaking voters. That link is on the screen too. And finally, if you want to listen to my audio podcast, you can follow that link as well. Thanks so much for watching.